You know the easiest way to get attention in the media? Tell people what they want to hear and feed their confirmation bias. When it comes to Donald Trump, you can be sure that a show like The View would be happy to take that battle position against him. They had a field day when just this Monday things started heating up between Donald Trump and Judge Arthur Engoron in the courtroom. Yes, that same judge that was seen smiling and posing for the cameras in court just last month. Let's just sit through these clips from The View and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Just mentioned a certain someone's wild day in court yesterday. What'd y'all think? Did you watch?
Some observations.
Let's hear the lawyer's point of view.
Well, you know, there's a certain decorum that must be in place and intact in a courtroom. And the judge is the arbiter of that decorum, as is the lawyer. That lawyer could not control her client. He lacked complete impulse control. It scared me that he had the proximity that he had to nuclear codes for our country. He also implicated himself in the litigation.
They're scared because the one president who didn't start any new wars and kept the world in peace had access to the nuclear codes, but not scared of the one who can barely put together sentences and has to be guided around. I've heard this scaremongering so many times only to be betrayed by the actual facts. His testy attitude in a courtroom against what he believes is legal entrapment to derail his campaign against a judge he believes is partisan lies in completely different universe to the madness needed to push the nuclear button. I'm sure we all know the point of these comparisons. When people feel afraid, that is when they comply.
Yeah, he has no respect because no one's checked him ever. Yeah. He's lived a life where no one ever put him in his place. Everything he ever got, every room he was ever in, and then the most powerful job in the free world, and he's had that. So that he is more emboldened, more empowered, more arrogant and flagrant than
I'm surprised he's not, and Whoopi has said this often, I'm surprised he hasn't been held in contempt.
I don't understand. Why hasn't he been? I don't understand.
Yes, Sarah, that's because the man he's made himself. And let's not forget Donald Trump, as one of the most successful businessmen in the country, has a decades-long history of dealing with the court system in his defense. You can talk about it if he's more or less argumentative, but the fact is the courts are never a place of conjecture or comebacks. Trump's current trial, which he often calls a witch hunt, risks significantly denting his real estate empire in New York, as well as damaging the prospects of his potential presidency. Combine this with the fact that the judge clearly told him on Monday that he could, quote, draw every negative reference he can in response to Donald Trump's behavior, just goes to show how heated it has gotten in a court that will potentially decide Trump's political and business future. If Trump is also hardly allowed to speak openly about the case because of the gag order, the only place for his assertiveness to manifest remains the courtroom.
This is what I'm afraid about, because this whole week when I was gone, those polls came out, which I know you hate, about how he is really... It's neck and neck, pretty much, with Biden in some swing states. And I thought, this is a guy, if he wins, it's all about revenge. Yes. He just wants to get... You know, Nixon had an enemies list. Yeah. And a lot of people felt it was an honor to be on it. And but he was out to get these people who are political enemies. This guy will deploy the military against demonstrators. People need to understand what this means in this country if he wins again.
They're trying so hard to portray Trump as a dictator, like Biden isn't the one going after his political opponents. Now you tell me, isn't that what dictators do? And Biden is neck and neck with Trump, the guy that can't find his way off a stage? When someone like Joy Behar goes by numbers on some CNN poll, instead of feeling the pulse of the American sentiment, that is when you eventually have reality hit you in the face. I actually think it's a disgrace that The View would go as far as using Trump's fan base and paint them all in the worst way they want to see in Donald Trump. When that happens, you've got one side solidly pit against the other, and you become the divisive wedge between the American people that you keep calling Trump.
You know what I think is also going to work against him is everybody in this audience knows, had we ever said or done anything like this to a judge in court, we would be underneath.
Double standard.
I think people don't like, Americans, regardless of what their belief system is, don't like a double standard.
I find that the MAGA people who are all in for him, they seem to feel like he's a victim of the system and that he's a pathetic case and he's fighting the system. And it's a witch hunt. And they're misinformed, they're low information voters.
But if they really thought it was a witch hunt, he'd be winning.
No, he wouldn't be winning, Whoopi. That's his whole point of calling it a witch hunt, whether you agree with Trump or not. She has no idea what she's talking about. Plus, the real double standard is not between Trump and the common person, but between Trump and his contemporaries that are in power today. That's the real barometer of whether the justice system is acting fair to all parties involved. Look to the other side of the aisle with Joe Biden, and you hardly see a media that's willing to hold actual authority to accountability. The real question the American people are asking is not about the business dealings of a former president, but the shadows cast on the current president and his son over his alleged international business dealings that actually impact American foreign policy. If a show like The View started to give just as much of a tough time over it, perhaps they would gain bipartisan respect and relevance. For example, perhaps dare talk about why Hunter Biden was on the boards of Chinese and Ukrainian energy companies like Burisma Holdings, or why his name was attached to shell companies funneling millions into his pockets with a dirty trail all the way to Kremlin. And why was his dad, then Vice President Biden, winning and dining with his son's supposed business partners? The day that I start seeing Whoopi Goldberg or Joy Behar ask those questions, that is the day I will develop 1 ounce of respect for them. Right now, the powers that be are too threatened by someone as unpredictable and uncontrollable as Donald Trump, once again taking the reins of the country.